The dreams started the same way every night. She was standing in a vast hall made of light, surrounded by beings who felt ancient and wise, and they were giving her instructions, detailed, specific instructions about what she needed to do once she arrived on Earth. She would wake up remembering the feeling of importance, of having agreed to something significant, but the actual details would fade within minutes, until the regression session, until she closed her eyes and went back to that hall of light and finally, fully, remembered the briefing, remembered the mission, remembered that she hadn't just randomly been born, she had been sent here, deliberately, with purpose, and everything in her life suddenly made sense. Her name was Natalie, and for 34 years she had felt like she was waiting for something, not in a passive, lazy way. She lived her life, pursued her career, maintained relationships, but underneath everything was this nagging sense that she was supposed to be doing something else, something specific, something important that she couldn't quite identify. She felt like an actor who had shown up to the theater but couldn't find the script, knowing she had lines to deliver but having no idea what they were. The feeling intensified every year. In her early 20s, it had been a vague background noise. By her late 20s, it was a constant hum of urgency. Now, in her mid-30s, it was almost unbearable. She would wake up in the morning with anxiety that had no obvious source, a feeling that she was running out of time, that she was failing at something crucial even though she couldn't name what that something was. Her therapist suggested it was existential anxiety, a midlife crisis arriving early. But Natalie knew it was more specific than that. She wasn't anxious about the meaning of life in general. She was anxious about her specific purpose, her particular mission that she had somehow forgotten. The dreams about the Hall of Light started appearing about 6 months before Natalie found her way to regression therapy. Always the same setting, always the same feeling of receiving instructions, always the same sense that what she was being told was desperately important, and always the frustration of waking up and being unable to remember the content, only the urgency. She tried everything to hold on to the dreams. Dream journals, setting intentions before sleep, even recording devices by her bed in case she could capture the instructions while still half asleep. Nothing worked. The dreams would slip away like water through her fingers, leaving her with only the residue of importance and the growing conviction that she was failing to remember something she had agreed to remember. A coworker mentioned past life regression during a lunch conversation about spirituality and consciousness. She described how regression had helped her understand patterns in her current life by revealing experiences from previous incarnations. But then she mentioned that some regression therapists also worked with pre-birth memories, helping people access what their soul had experienced and decided before choosing to incarnate. That hit Natalie like lightning. Pre-birth memories, the space before incarnation. That's what her dreams were showing her. Not a past life but the time before this life. The planning and preparation that had happened before she was born. She needed to access that consciously, needed to remember fully what she had been told in that hall of light. She found Dr. Patricia through an online search, a therapist who specialized in what she called pre-birth planning regression. Dr. Patricia had been doing this work for 20 years and described it as accessing the soul's experience in the space between lives, including the planning stages where souls chose their next incarnation and the purposes they wanted to fulfill. Natalie made an appointment immediately, driven by the certainty that this was what she needed. Their first session was just conversation. Dr. Patricia asked detailed questions about Natalie's sense of mission, her feeling of having forgotten something important, her dreams about receiving instructions. She listened carefully and said that what Natalie described was consistent with what she called mission-based incarnations. Sometimes souls didn't incarnate just for their own learning and growth. Sometimes they incarnated with specific missions, specific work they had agreed to do that was part of larger collective purposes. These mission-based souls often felt exactly what Natalie described. A constant sense of waiting for their real work to begin, combined with frustration at not consciously remembering what that work was. Dr. Patricia explained that the forgetting was deliberate. Souls could unincarnate with full memory of their missions because that would interfere with free will and authentic human experience. They had to forget temporarily so they could genuinely live as humans, make real choices, develop in natural ways. But the soul always carried the mission information beneath conscious awareness. And it would surface when the time was right, when the person was ready to consciously engage with their purpose. She suggested a regression to access Natalie's pre-birth planning, to see the meeting in the Hall of Light that Natalie's dreams kept showing her. This would help Natalie understand what mission she had agreed to and why it was surfacing now. In her mid-30s, when it had been dormant for so long, Natalie agreed eagerly, desperate to finally get answers after years of searching. The regression session was scheduled for the following week. Natalie arrived feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. What if she discovered her mission was something she couldn't actually do? What if the instructions were too difficult or required skills she didn't have? Dr. Patricio reassured her that souls only agreed to missions they were capable of fulfilling, that the very fact she was here seeking this information meant she was ready to consciously engage with her purpose. They began with deep breathing, with Dr. Patricia guiding Natalie through techniques designed to alter consciousness and access deeper levels of awareness. Natalie felt herself sinking into trance, her thinking mind becoming quiet. A broader part of herself emerging. Dr. Patricia counted her upward rather than backward, suggesting that with each number Natalie would rise above her current life, above the moment of birth, into the space where her soul had existed before. Natalie felt herself moving through layers of consciousness, through what felt like a membrane separating physical from spiritual reality. And as she emerged on the other side, she found herself exactly where her dreams had been showing her, the Hall of Light. She was there, really there, not as a vague dream image but as a fully present experience. The hall was vast beyond measurement, with walls and ceiling that seemed to be made of pure light that shifted through colors beyond the normal spectrum. The floor beneath her, or rather beneath her awareness, since she had no feet, was solid but also luminous, as if she was standing on condensed light. And surrounding her were presences, beings who appeared as forms of radiant light, each with their own unique color and frequency. Dr. Patricia asked her to describe what she was experiencing. Natalie tried to find words for something that transcended physical reality. She explained she was in what felt like a council chamber, a place where important meetings happened, where souls received assignments and made agreements about their upcoming incarnations. She understood without being told that this was where mission-based souls came for their final briefing before incarnating, where they received detailed instructions about the work they had agreed to do. One presence in particular drew her attention. A being of gold and white light who radiated such profound wisdom and love that Natalie wanted to weep just from proximity to it. This was her primary guide, she understood, the being who had been with her soul through many lifetimes, who had helped her plan this current incarnation, who was about to give her the briefing about her mission. Dr. Patricia asked the guide if it would share information about Natalie's mission, about what she had agreed to do in this lifetime. The guide's response came not as words but as direct knowing, information flowing into Natalie's consciousness. And what she learned was both overwhelming and clarifying. Natalie's soul had volunteered to be part of what the guide called a consciousness shift team. Earth was going through a massive transformation, a collective awakening where humanity was evolving from fear-based separation consciousness into love-based unity consciousness. This shift was naturally occurring as part of Earth's evolution, but it needed help. It needed souls who would incarnate specifically to facilitate the transition, to hold higher frequencies, to help others wake up, to anchor the new consciousness into physical reality. Natalie was one of thousands of souls who had volunteered for this mission, not because they had to, not as punishment or obligation, but because they genuinely wanted to help. They loved humanity and Earth and wanted to contribute to this momentous evolutionary leap, so they had agreed to incarnate during this specific time period. To be born into human form but carry within their souls the remember of higher consciousness, the knowing of what humanity was capable of becoming. The guide showed Natalie the briefing, the detailed instructions she had received before incarnating. She saw herself in this hall of light, receiving information about the specific challenges she would face and the specific gifts she would carry. The guide explained that she would be born in 1985, positioning her perfectly to be a young adult during the peak of the shift. She would grow up with one foot in the old consciousness and one in the new, giving her understanding of both states and making her an effective bridge. She would be born to parents who loved her but didn't understand her, creating just enough discomfort that she would question the conventional life path and seek deeper meaning. She would be naturally intuitive and sensitive, able to sense energies and emotions that others couldn't perceive, and she would feel fundamentally different from those around her, not fitting into normal social structures. because her soul was literally from a different frequency than the consciousness most humans operated from. The guide also showed her the activation timeline. Her mission wouldn't begin immediately upon birth. She would need years to grow, to learn, to develop the skills and understanding necessary for her work. The full activation would happen in her mid-30s, triggered by a combination of life events and cosmic timing. Before then, she would feel the mission as background urgency without conscious understanding. After activation, she would remember and would be able to consciously engage with her purpose. Dr. Patricia asked what specifically Natalie was meant to do, what her actual mission work involved. The guide showed her that her primary role was as what might be called a frequency anchor, an awakening catalyst. Her job was to hold a higher consciousness frequency simply by being present in physical form, creating a resonance field that others could attune to. When people were ready to wake up, to remember their own spiritual nature, they would be drawn to her. And through conversations, through energy exchange, through her simple presence, she would help catalyze their awakening. This didn't require doing anything dramatic or public. She wouldn't be a famous teacher or influential leader. Her work would happen one person at a time, in coffee shops and living rooms, through casual conversations and deep connections. She would help people by seeing them, by reflecting back their truth, by holding space for them to remember who they really were beneath their human conditioning. And through her efforts, and the efforts of thousands of others like her, humanity would gradually shift into the new consciousness. The guide also showed Natalie other aspects of her mission. She would write, creating content that helped people understand the shift that was happening and gave them tools for navigating it. She would create communities, bringing together other mission-based souls who were waking up to their purposes. She would work with energy, using her natural sensitivity to help clear and transmute the heavy, fear-based energies that were being released as humanity evolved. All of this was part of her agreement, part of what she had volunteered to do. Dr. Patricia asked why Natalie's mission was activating now, in her mid-30s, when she had felt the urgency for years. The guide explained that everything happened according to perfect timing. Natalie had needed her 20s to develop skills, gain life experience, build relationships, and establish herself in the world. If her mission had activated too early, she wouldn't have been ready for it, wouldn't have had the maturity or capability to handle it. But now, at 34, all the pieces were in place. She had the life experience, the emotional intelligence, the skills, and the consciousness level to consciously take on her mission work. The dreams that had been intensifying were her soul's way of preparing her for activation. By repeatedly showing her the hall of light and the briefing, her subconscious was priming her to remember, making it easier for this regression to access the full memory. And the urgency she had been feeling was her soul knowing that activation time was approaching, getting ready to shift from unconscious preparation to conscious engagement. The guide also showed Natalie why she had been so resistant to conventional life paths, why nothing had felt quite right despite her attempts to fit in. It was because her soul had different priorities than her human personality. Her human self wanted security, belonging, approval. But her soul wanted mission fulfillment, even when that meant being unconventional, being alone sometimes, being misunderstood. The tension between human desires and soul mission had created the constant discomfort that had characterized much of her life. Dr. Patricia asked if there were other mission-based souls that Natalie would work with. The guide showed her that yes, absolutely. She was part of a team, a soul group that had volunteered together. Some of them she already knew in her current life. Her best friend from college was part of her soul group. A colleague she felt unusually connected to was part of her soul group. Random people she had met and felt instant recognition with were often soul group members, and many more were scattered across the planet, people she would meet when the time was right, connections that would form as they all activated into their missions. The guide emphasized that Natalie wasn't alone in this work. She was part of a vast network of mission-based souls, all doing similar work in different ways, all contributing to the collective shift. When she felt discouraged or overwhelmed, she could remember this network, could reach out energetically to her soul group for support. And as more mission-based souls activated and remembered their purposes, the network would grow stronger, making the work easier for everyone. Dr. Patricia asked if the guide had any specific advice for Natalie about how to move forward with her mission now that she was consciously remembering. The guide's guidance was both practical and spiritual. First, trust the unfolding. Natalie didn't need to force anything or make dramatic changes immediately. Her mission would unfold naturally as she followed her authentic impulses and intuition. The people she was meant to help would appear in her life. The opportunities to do her work would present themselves. Her job was simply to stay open, stay aware, and say yes when the moments arrived. Second, develop her gifts. Natalie had natural, intuitive, and energetic abilities that would strengthen with conscious practice. She should learn about energy work, study consciousness and spirituality, develop her ability to sense and work with subtle energies. These skills would make her mission work more effective and would also help her navigate the intensity of being a frequency anchor in a world that was still largely operating from fear-based consciousness. Third, take care of herself. Mission-based souls often burned out by giving too much, by feeling responsible for everyone's awakening, by forgetting that they were human and had human needs. Natalie needed to maintain boundaries, take time for rest and self-care, remember that she couldn't awaken anyone who wasn't ready. Her job was to offer the frequency and the support, not to force transformation on anyone. And finally, enjoy being human. Yes, she had a mission. Yes, she had work to do. But she had also chosen to incarnate in this time and place because it offered experiences and opportunities that could not be had in non-physical form. She should appreciate the beauty of Earth, enjoy the pleasures of physical existence, engage fully with the human experience. Mission work didn't require sacrificing joy or becoming overly serious. In fact, joy and lightness were themselves powerful tools for awakening others. The guide also shared something that brought Natalie to tears. The guide told her how proud they were of her, how grateful for her willingness to volunteer for this difficult mission. Incarnating during a time of collective transformation was not easy. It meant being sensitive in a harsh world, being awake in a sleeping society, carrying frequencies that the surrounding environment often rejected. But Natalie and others like her were doing it anyway, out of love and service. And from the perspective of the guides and the larger spiritual community, these mission-based souls were heroes, warriors of consciousness, brave beyond measure. Dr. Patricia began bringing Natalie back to present consciousness, counting her down slowly, reminding her of her physical body and current time. When Natalie opened her eyes, she was crying but also felt a profound sense of relief and clarity. She remembered. She finally, fully remembered what she had agreed to do. The mission she had been sent here to fulfill. The work she had been waiting to consciously begin. In the days and weeks after the regression, Natalie's life began to shift rapidly. Understanding her mission changed how she related to everything. The job that had felt wrong suddenly made sense as a temporary platform that provided stability while she prepared for her real work. The relationships that had felt shallow suddenly showed themselves as serving specific purposes, teaching her specific lessons she needed for her mission. The years of feeling different and not fitting in suddenly revealed themselves as necessary preparation, forcing her to develop independence and inner knowing rather than relying on external validation. She started consciously engaging with her mission work. She quit her corporate job and started offering intuitive coaching, creating space for the one-on-one awakening work the guide had shown her. She began writing a blog about consciousness and awakening, sharing insights and perspectives that helped people understand the transformation humanity was undergoing. She created an online community for people who were feeling the same mission urgency she had felt, providing support and connection for others who were waking up to their purposes. And the people came. Just as the guide had promised, people who were ready to awaken started appearing in her life. Some found her through her writing, some were referred by friends, some just seemed to randomly cross her path at exactly the moment they needed what she could offer. And with each person, Natalie could feel herself doing her mission work, holding the frequency, catalyzing their remembering, helping them take the next steps on their own awakening journeys. She also connected with her soul group. The college friend she suspected was part of her team confirmed it, having had her own activation experience recently. They started collaborating, supporting each other's mission work, creating projects together that amplified both their impacts. She met other mission-based souls through synchronicity and recognition, forming a local network of people doing similar work in different ways. And she felt the larger global network energetically, sensed the thousands of other souls who were also activated and doing their part to facilitate humanity's evolution. The urgency that had plagued her for years transformed into purposeful action. She was no longer waiting for her life to begin. She was living it, doing the work she came here to do, fulfilling the mission she had agreed to before she was born. The anxiety didn't disappear completely, but it changed quality. Instead of undefined dread, it became appropriate concern about the state of the world, combined with determination to contribute to its healing. Natalie also developed the gifts the guide had mentioned. She studied energy work and discovered she had natural abilities that strengthened with practice. She learned to sense the energy of spaces and people, to clear heavy frequencies, to transmit higher vibrations consciously. She developed her intuition through meditation and practice, learning to distinguish between ego voice and soul guidance, and she studied consciousness, spirituality, and the mechanics of awakening, giving herself frameworks and vocabulary for understanding and teaching what she intuitively knew. Years passed. Natalie watched as more and more mission-based souls activated, as the network of conscious awakeners grew and strengthened. She saw the collective shift happening in real time, watched as more people questioned the old paradigms, sought deeper meaning, opened to their spiritual nature. It wasn't always smooth or easy. There was resistance, backlash, periods where it seemed like consciousness was regressing rather than progressing. But she could see the overall trajectory, could feel that humanity was indeed evolving, that the mission she and thousands of others were doing was working. She thought often about that hole of light, about the briefing she had received, about the moment she had said yes to this mission, and she felt grateful that her soul had been brave enough to volunteer, grateful for the guides who had prepared her so thoroughly, grateful for the soul group who supported her, grateful for every person she had helped awaken, grateful even for the years of confusion and urgency, because they had been part of the process, part of what pushed her to finally seek regression. And she carried a message for everyone she met who felt similar urgency, who sensed they had a mission but couldn't remember what it was. She told them to trust the feeling, to honor the urgency even when they didn't understand it. She encouraged them to seek their own remembering, whether through regression or meditation or whatever method called to them. She assured them they weren't crazy or grandiose for thinking they had important work to do. Many people were here on specific missions. Many souls had volunteered to help with humanity's evolution, and all of them would remember when the timing was right, when they were ready to consciously take on their work. She also reminded people that mission work didn't have to look impressive or dramatic from the outside. The person serving coffee might be holding a frequency that helped everyone who entered the cafe. The parent raising children might be incarnating future conscious leaders. The artist creating beauty might be transmuting dark energy into light. The teacher in a classroom might be planting seeds that would bloom decades later. Mission work happened in countless forms, and all of it mattered. Looking back on her life before regression, Natalie understood that even her confusion and searching had been purposeful. Every experience, every relationship, every challenge had been preparing her for mission work. The sensitive childhood had taught her empathy. The years of not fitting in had taught her independence. The corporate job had taught her practical skills. The relationships that ended had taught her about herself. Nothing had been wasted. Everything had been training. And looking forward, Natalie felt clear about her path. She would continue her mission work for as long as this lifetime lasted. She would help as many people as came to her. She would write, teach, hold space, transmute energy, whatever was needed. She would collaborate with her soul group and the larger network of mission-based souls. And when this life eventually ended, when her soul returned to the space between lives, she would have fulfilled what she came here to do. She would have kept the agreement she made in that hall of light. She would have done her part to help humanity evolve. Subscribe to discover the mission your soul agreed to before choosing this incarnation.